This podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Check out everything related to Batman and the entire Bat family at the BatmanUniverse.net, including news and original content related to comics, movies, television, merchandise, video games, and more. Also, check out some of the other unique podcasts that TBU has to offer. Consider supporting this podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 can go a long way in supporting this content that you enjoy. Look for a link over at the BatmanUniverse.net to offer your support now. And now, on with the show.
Microsoft's fifth floor. Ladies' modems, children's shareware, and our bridal peripheral salon.
Wow. Taskbars and email and shortcuts, oh my.
Taskbars and email and shortcuts, oh my. The Wicked Witch of Windows 95.
Oh, I heard that, and you are?
This is Jennifer Aniston. I'm Matthew Perry. We're here to see Mr. Bill Gates about a possible starring role in the video guide to Microsoft Windows 95. You don't like the Drake. I hate the Drake.
Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Myers, and welcome to episode 132. This show is brought to you by the BatmanUniverse.net, your home for all things Batman and, of course, Robin. We're also associated with Batman on Films Podcast Network at BatmanPodcastNetwork.com. So between the two podcast networks, the Batman Universe, our home site, and BatmanPodcastNetwork.com, you can find us. Speaking of find us, we're across all the social media platforms. We're on Twitter at ELTD Podcast. You can follow us at Facebook at Facebook.com/EveryoneLovesADrake. We're on Instagram, and if you email into the show at RobinELTDPodcast@Yahoo.com, we will read your email and comments on the show. And we have a YouTube page as well. And if you listen on Apple Podcasts, leave a review and a star review for us, and we will read that as well. So, like I said, I'm Rob, Terrence, and Ryan are here. This is a little intro in typical ELTD fashion. We recorded about a 2.5-3 hour recording session to complete our coverage of Batman Legacy. Then, of course, I'm going to piecemeal these out over a couple episodes to give you, a listener, more content, since we had a little bit of a summer break and trying to get our feet back under us after getting through COVID and everything. And of course, you know, I think I say in the episode that our coverage for Batman Legacy, it lasted just about as long as COVID itself, if you put in Contagion right with it. So today we'll be taking a look at Batman 534 and Detective Comics 701. Like I said, Terrence and Ryan are here. There won't be a long preamble into this. We'll get right into the episode. We'll do a couple quick little promos, and on the other side, we will begin our coverage, the ending coverage of Batman Legacy. Thanks for tuning in, and welcome to the show.
Grab your bat microphone, it's time to start the show. Check out the Bat Pod with your host, Bill Beer. This was an issue. Yes. Have you ever had a cucumber sandwich? And his co-host, Joey Galvez.
I mean, I like it, cucumber water. Have you ever had that? It's so refreshing. It's
Topic of the week.
I really love the Michael Keaton Batman, the Tim Burton Batman.
I thought you were going to mention Batman and Robin for a minute. George Clooney had you hello or character spotlights. The Condiment King was a guy named Buddy Stanley, a former stand-up comedian. But, stump your co-host segments? Okay, where's your Batman card? Just go ahead and send that to me.
Sorry.
And we'll rip that up. Okay. You can find the Bat Pod on the nerdylegion.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, iTunes, Google Play, and we're now on Stitcher. The Bat Pod is a proud member of the Nerdy Legion Network.
You're a crime-fighting collective. It's the Bat Pod.
What the blue bacon?
In 1974, four men literally changed the face of rock and roll forever.
Gene Simmons, Peter Criss, Ace Frehley, and Paul Stanley wanted to become the band they never got to see.
Over the next 40-plus years, the music, the makeup, the merchandise, and the loyal fan base have propelled KISS to one of rock and roll's elite groups.
With KISS heading down their end-of-the-road tour, we thought we would start our journey.
Turn it up to 10 because we love it loud.
Right Between the Eyes is a podcast all about our favorite band, KISS.
We will be covering all eras of KISS with the various albums, studio, live, and compilations, plus album mashups and more.
We will also cover solo and band projects from all members, past and present, while also looking at the various bands that have opened for KISS as well.
Not to mention all of the fun items in the KISS catalog. TV appearances, long-form videos, merchandise, comic books. Come on, the list goes on and on.
Coming in late May, early June 2021 to a podcast platform near you.
Follow us on Twitter at RBTE Podcast. Loud. I want to hear it loud.
We're back, and I think our coverage of Batman Legacy went on as long as the pandemic, because in the issues that we're talking about today, or the series of episodes you could hear depending on how in Drake fashion I put this all together, I see the actual mention of the word vaccine in one of these issues. And I know we've talked about it before that, I had got mine a while back. Still haven't seen any masks in this other than a doctor. So Chuck Dixon, you might have been right. But we have everybody on tap if we're in a bar, because now you can go out to bars again, which is what I'm doing tonight. We have Terrence and Ryan here. Terrence, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Not only going to a bar, I'm going to Florida next week, going to a theme park. Woohoo! Yeah.
Actually, ride a ride, probably.
Yes. Yeah. We're going to Universal Studios this time, so they got the new Jurassic Park Velocicoaster up. That's the new one. Just it opened 2 days ago on the 10th. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So it's still like really, really new then.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we have Ryan. Ryan, what's going on, sir?
Oh, well, I don't know about you guys, but I just like to state for the record that I thought this pandemic was very real. Y'all are going to bars and theme parks and crap, and I'm like, no, I'm wearing a mask right now. No, I'm not.
You sound really clear.
But I just want to say, no, this pandemic's real. I want to be on record with that.
Yes.
But yeah, like we're getting back into the world here in North Carolina. We're in this weird, like, nobody has to wear masks anymore, but like most places kind of still are.
Right.
Kind of. And I've been going to my faithful Alamo Drafthouse Theater for movies. I'm going to go tonight and see Quiet Place Part 2. And I don't know if it looks like they just today, actually, I think they have finally lifted their buffer seating, which was actually kind of nice, like where you would buy a seat and then they would lock off the seats to the right and left of you. And you have to wear a mask when you're in your seat, but it looks like that's just gone now. So
okay,
we'll see how it goes.
That's right.
I got my vaccine, my antivirus, as Batman would call it.
That's right. So it's just so funny. I know it's been a few episodes, and it's probably been a month or so since we've been doing this officially again, since we've had a little break and trying to figure out everything. But it's been funny to still read some of this, and like we've said before in previous episodes, that back in 96 when we were originally reading these, it just like you couldn't wrap your head around it, and still hearing Batman say certain things like, oh, the city's rallying together and doing this, that, or the other. I'm like, yep, I stood in a line here. Yep, I've done that. And it's pretty cool. But let's get into the heart of it. So today, over the next couple episodes, we will be looking at Batman 534, Detective Comics 701, our boy Tim Drake, and Robin 33. Can you believe it? The show is like 132 episodes, and we're on Robin 33. But I digress. Detective Comics 702, and we will talk about Batman Batman Bane #1, that I guess is a quasi tie-in to Batman and Robin. So more on that once we get there.
Yeah, Rob made us buy Batman #1 each. The podcast cost me $8 million. Yeah.
All right. So,
which Batman #1? Tom King #1, or Scott Snyder #1,
right?
Bill Fingers #1.
So let's just get into it. Batman 534. Terrence, why don't you take us away on the information, the synopsis for this bad boy?
Sure, you got it. Batman 534. Cover date September 1996. On sale date July 10th, 1996. Cover price 195 pennies. Editor Dennis J. O'Neill. Writer Doug Moench. I can never say his name right. Penciler Jim Aparo. This must be one of the last comics he did for DC Comics, I think. And
yeah, I was wondering.
I think the regular penciler was what's his face? The guy with the big ears. I'm blanking on his name. Kelly Jones,
yes,
right? Yes. So this guy, he must have been doing a fill-in for Kelly Jones. Inker, Bill. God, you give me all the hard names, Rob. Bill Steinkiewicz. That sounds like a Seinfeld character.
Sienkiewicz.
Yeah. Letterer Todd Klein. Colorist Lee Lohreid. Cover credits. Oh, artist Kelly Jones. If there was the name right there I was looking for. All right, Legacy Part 5. A Wound on the Heart of Heaven. Batman in Calcutta, waiting for Oracle to contact him and give him more information on the possible location of the virus. Oracle contacts him and tells him that the League of Assassins might be listening to their communications, so she tells Batman to go to the Temple of Kali to meet someone that she arranged to assist him in the search of the virus. Batman goes to the place but finds only an urchin, a street kid. The kid is curious about Batman's appearance, and Batman tells the kid to stay away to protect him. Suddenly, Lady Shiva arrives at the place and tells Batman that Oracle contacted her and is there to help him. The two of them are ambushed by the League of Assassins, but they are no match for the combined forces of Shiva and Batman. Batman and Shiva start to roam the city, and the urchin follows them closely. They arrive at a Hindu festival named Festival of Durga, where some big-sized wax statues of the goddess Durga are thrown into the river as a symbol of hope and courage. Shiva spots some suspicious activity near one of the statues, so she and Batman decide to go. At the sight of Batman, two men run away, but Batman reaches them in no time. Shiva and Batman engage in combat once more with members of the League of Assassins. One of them pulls out a gun and is ready to shoot Batman, but the urchin tackles the assassin. This one, enraged, shoots the kid instead. An angry Batman breaks the assassin's arm and forces him to tell him where the virus is. The assassin tells Batman the truth before exploding gas into his mouth, killing himself. The virus is on one of the goddess wax figures. Batman dives into the river to find the virus. A second before giving up, Batman sees the virus and takes it from the river, preventing it from mixing with the water that most of Calcutta uses. Once on the surface, Batman reaches Shiva and the urchin who didn't die from the shooting. Batman carries the child with renewed hope.
And it goes without saying that all of the synopsis and information come from Mike's Amazing World and DC Wikia, because I was lazy and I didn't write a synopsis, so thank you, DC Wikia, for your synopsis. This issue, right off the bat, when I think I remember when I got this cover, I thought, oh, Kelly Jones. I don't think I paid attention that Jim Aparo was drawing the issue, and probably in those first couple pages, I noticed, like, this doesn't look like Kelly Jones, and I don't know if I would have guessed this was Jim Aparo right off the bat, but once I realized it was Jim Aparo, I could kind of see that, but you can definitely tell this is latter-day Jim Aparo, so he was only sparely being used as a fill-in artist, so Kelly Jones obviously must have had something going on. Did you recognize this, Terrence, as being Jim Aparo when you first read it?
No, but I think it goes to show how much an inker can influence and change an artist, because the Aparo stuff from like Knightfall and the 80s, he always had really clean lines, like inkers who were really clean and colorists who were your traditional bright color comics. And this is, colored very dark with lots of like grays and shades of blue, heavily inked, like the lines are heavy and it makes it look like a completely different artist. It's pretty crazy how that kind of works with comic books.
I wonder that too, if that's part of him, Bill, working with Kelly Jones for so long. You think that's probably part of it too, Ryan?
Oh, was Bill Sienkiewicz an inker for Kelly Jones for a while?
I believe so.
No, it was the other guy.
Was it?
Was always Puck. Was it Jones and Puckett? I think
Puckett.
Or something. Yeah.
Okay. So what I thought was interesting is that if you look at Bill Sienkiewicz's like actual his art, he's an artist too, a penciler too. Like if you look at the stuff that he draws and inks himself, it does have that same kind of very inky, dark, rough, kind of stark quality to it. So if you know his art and you see him ink Jim Aparo on this, it makes a lot of sense the way it looks. And interestingly, if you jump to the next issue we're going to talk about, if you look at Detective 701, that's a Graham Nolan cover with a Bill Sienkiewicz ink. And we know how clean and crisp Graham Nolan's work can look in comics, but you can see the Bill Sienkiewicz inking applied to a cover like that too, and it is like Graham Nolan, but with a lot more edge into it, So that's another example, right, in the next book of how much, like you said, Rob, how much a difference an inker can make on the style and the tone and mood of a comic book.
But I think what I really dug about this issue, from an artistic standpoint, is the coloring. Everything pretty much is all in shadow until you get to the final little battle sequence. Is just an all muted, like very dark blues, grays, purples to some extent.
Yeah. It feels like night.
Yes.
Where a lot of times you'll read a comic story that's set at night and it's like doesn't really give you that feeling, but this one absolutely does.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And you can kind of tell, especially with the street urchin where he's peeking around the corners, his face is in shadow, and even just the shadows of Batman himself where you can't see the outline of his face on page 7, right as we're getting introduced to Lady Shiva, which I'll bring up in just a minute, but the panel where Batman says there could be danger, and the urchin says, very well, big mister, which I thought was kind of funny. The shadows of Batman where you can't see the lower part of his jaw, you're just seeing his eyes. I always thought that was really cool. So I brought up Lady Shiva, and trivia for this one is Lady Shiva mentions her last encounter with Batman, and it happened in Robin 8, if you can believe that, during the Knightfall storyline. So I guess through the course of the podcast, I didn't realize it had been that long, but that's a couple years in just publication time for these issues to come out to see Lady Shiva come back. And I had completely forgotten that she was even part of Legacy at all. So do you guys remember her being in Legacy, or were you as surprised as I was? I clearly remember reading this, and I must have blanked this complete issue out. I was reading it as if it was the first time, and I was going, why don't I remember this issue? So, Ryan, what do you thought? Your thoughts?
Yeah, so, on our journey of covering Legacy, the front half of the story is absolutely what has stuck in my mind way more than this back half that we're covering today, for the most part. And this issue is definitely part of that. This issue and the previous one that the last issue we covered on the previous episode are the two that I really forgot the most. But yeah, I forgot Shiva was in this, but it does make sense because in my head it's like, yeah, of course, the last time we saw her was the whole Night's End, Mask of Tengu thing, and the last she knew, she was trying to get Batman, Bruce Wayne, to kill somebody while he was trying to reclaim the mantle. So the conversation they have in here is a really cool, connective piece of continuity of a commentary on that, following up on that, and Shiva's postulation on what she might have done in the same situation if Jean-Paul Valley's Bats was there instead of Bruce. Like, that stuff for me as like a Knightfall fan is like, okay, this is the dense storytelling type stuff that I like, Easter eggy type stuff I like in stories like this. But this issue is a really cool standalone kind of story too, so I really kind of dug it.
Terrence, your thoughts?
I was a lot like Ryan. I remembered like Detective Comics 700 really well. I didn't really remember the rest of this storyline all that great. Like, spoilers for the whole end of it, I wasn't really that impressed with the ending of the story either. Like, I thought it kind of ended more with a whimper than a bang, but maybe you guys will disagree. Definitely, I thought that the beginning of the story was much better than the end. Talking about the whole arc of Legacy, not just this one particular issue. I always forget with Lady Shiva when she pops up, and especially when you're reading comics out of order, like, is she a good guy? Is she a bad guy? Are they with her? Are they not with her?
She's usually always an villain. She's went from like a real villain to a anti-hero-ish character. Yeah.
It's always kind of like, where does she stand with them? Like, Oracle calls her for help, but then Batman's not really too keen that she's there. And then, like, is she Jason Todd's mother? Wait, no, she's not. But now she's Cassandra Cain's mother. But wait, Cassandra Cain's not in this timeline just yet. So it was kind of cool to see her in, like, just kind of pop up for, a few pages in this one story. But I'm kind of glad she wasn't, like, a major part of the whole Legacy arc, because it would, I think, just kind of muddled it.
Yeah, this is one, if you were gonna say, like, where are the filler issues, I gotta agree with Ryan that part 4 and part 5, the Shadow of the Bat issue that we read previously, and this one, I think you could take these out and not really lose the overall narrative. Batman is on a mission trying to track down the next part of the plague, and you could get that in a couple excerpt balloons. Although I did like the street urchin, or the kid, I believe they call them, if I'm looking at the notes here, the kid in the story is called the urchin. In another word is saying street children. During the festival, this is kind of funny, the Festival of the Draga is a real-life celebration, and it's rarely celebrated in Calcutta. So I thought that was kind of funny that Dixon wanted to have this festival here, but it's rarely held there. But being that the kid, spoilers, is, if you haven't read it by now, it's too bad.
Munch. Dixon didn't write this one.
Or, excuse me, Munch, rather.
Yeah, but he might have had a hand in it, because they were doing those conference, things and stuff. But that is a real deep dive. If you're like, well, that festival in India doesn't really take place there that much. But, there's also a guy running around in a bat suit. So, yeah.
Right. And peek behind the curtain like, wow, Rob really knew that. I'm using the internet for that reference, so I wouldn't
know. I don't know. Are you using Windows 95 for that?
Well, yeah, that's why it took so long for me to pull that up.
Hey, and real quick, can I throw this in, and then you can edit it out, or just or move it?
I'm glad we're back, folks.
Why would he do that?
Kelly Jones, we said he the inker, and then you said he was normally inked by Stankiewicz, and then I said it was
Stankiewicz.
Who did I say? Kelly Puckett, I think. We're both wrong. It's John Beatty is the inker for. I think Kelly Puckett's a writer. I don't even think he inks.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So John Beatty was the one who would ink most of his stuff on Batman.
This pandemic has hurt more than going out to bars and movie theaters. It's affected our ability to podcast and not sound like idiots.
You need to add in some clips of. I sent you the YouTube link of the Friends Windows 95. If they say anything about viruses or something, you got to add in Chandler Bing's discussion on viruses. Yeah,
awesome. That's gonna be the drinking game, folks. Now you can go to the bar anytime we talk about viruses. And
I got an idea. Come on, let me just something I'm kind of fooling around with.
Here, Chandler Bing, take a drink. So, but the thing with the kid, of him being shot and Batman being upset, not that I secretly wanted the kid to die, but I thought that would have added some weight and gravitas to this, and it almost appears like the kid's going to be okay, which, I mean, later on, we'll get the inverse of that with Robin, but I think there would have been a little bit more weight to Batman having this kid die as opposed to the one that Robin comes in contact with, as he turns away at the very end. So maybe not, but thoughts, Ryan?
So I actually really like how the kid in this story gets implemented and how it resolves. Because as opposed to what happens in the following issues with Tim Drake's interaction with a kid that has the clinch, this interaction with Batman and this kid is kind of the heart of this issue.
Yeah.
And you kind of get the best of both worlds, because there is a moment where you think he's dead, and you see Batman's reaction, and then Batman saves him, and then the kid's alive at the end, and Batman gets to kind of... Because the whole story talks about the city they're in and the state that they're in, and impoverished, with poverty and everything like that, and to see Batman try to interact with people in that area was I thought, really interesting. And with Lady Shiva, as a callback to Mask of Tengu stuff in Night's End, the whole core of that story was all about, what Batman is Batman a hero, is what is a hero, should he kill, should he not kill? Mm-hmm. And the way that Batman interacts with this kid is kind of a reflection of that, and you get some of that at the end about Shiva's discussion with Batman, be proud of him, he chose the way of a warrior, and Batman says no, he almost died, but he killed no one, he chose the way of a hero. And there's an ongoing commentary about that through this issue, and I thought that was kind of a cool thing, and it made a larger point about Batman as a hero.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing is that it the way the kid, it has a really old school with the kid and with the international setting, it really gave me kind of a Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams vibe, and it really made me think of the Brave and the Bold number 93 issue that I covered with Ryan Lauer on the Batman Book Club for one of the Halloween issues we did, episodes we did.
Oh yeah,
where so if you have DC Universe Infinite, you can find Brave and the Bold 93 on there, and it's like Batman in the House of Mystery. Batman's on a vacation, I think some Irish, Scottish type place, and he interacts with this kid, and there's a haunted mansion and stuff like that, and it's kind of the same deal. It's kind of the same deal where he has to kind of interact with a kid through the whole thing, and it's interesting because Batman has experience, with younger crime fighting partners, so it's kind of a funny thing to be like, you're just a kid, you can't be out here, and it's like, well, you kind of train kids to fight, don't you, Batman?
It's kind of your thing.
It's kind of your thing, yeah. So, but yeah, to prevent myself from rambling too much, there's a lot of good storytelling meat to chew on in this little single issue, and it holds up by itself, which I think is kind of neat.
Yeah. Terrence, your thoughts here on the Batman's interaction with the kid?
All right, I'm going to completely 100% disagree with you, Rob, and I'm glad the kid survived. In fact, when I was reading it, it seemed like, I think it's very much a comic trope, or just a trope in a lot of kinds of
we don't see a body
stories
that you don't know if they're dead.
Yeah, you meet somebody who's not the main character, not somebody from the series. He does something that endears you to them, and then they kill him at the end for dramatic. He's dead. But, we were never going to see this kid again anyway and all that. So the fact that I think I remember reading it and thinking, oh man, are they just going to kill this kid at the end? And I'm thinking, is this because I remember reading it 30 years ago, or is it just because it's such a trope to introduce the kid and then, kill him at the end? So I liked that he survived, but also if you go right back to the very first page, which again I really like the art with the apparel and the darker inks and the colors, I really like it, but it talks about how such a bad place Calcutta is due to it says it's often an ugly and desperate place representing the worst of India. But then it says, and yet the best as well, humor against adversity, an indomitable spirit amidst crushing despair. And so that kid kind of represented that, and that kid like
exactly, yeah,
getting shot but surviving, I thought was like just a good, callback to the beginning. So unlike you, Rob, I'm glad the kid survived. I know you love dead children, Rob, and just the more the better, and but I'm not a monster like you.
The thoughts and opinions of this podcast are Rob Myers is alone and do not affect
some extreme opinions on this show.
I know.
Pandemics and kids. And
while I think, Terrence, I can't remember which one of you said it, that I think this is a good standalone issue. I think this issue gets lost in this book, and I think you take this out, and this is Detective Comics 703. If this was the next issue just by itself, it's not tied, or somewhere down the line, it's an adventure. You take out the clench parts of it, and it's just a disease or it's a bomb that's going to explode. I think this turns out to be a really good, solid issue by itself, but I think intermixed with Legacy overall, it unfortunately gets lost and buried in the overall narrative. I think that's kind of sad because I think this issue is really strong, and it's one that I'm kind of disappointed in myself that I didn't remember it better, because I got to the end of it and thought, I really enjoyed this. So before we go on to Detective Comics 701, any final thoughts on this particular issue before we move on? Let's start with Ryan.
It's got cool art. It stands alone. The coloring is really interesting. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this particular issue that does kind of set it apart from a normal regular monthly book and as a part in a big crossover like this. So it's pretty good, and I think everybody has their part to play in this, but I think it all works together. It's something, this particular team of Doug Munch and Aparo and Sinkovich, like that's not one, and the colorist also, that's not a team that you see together a lot, I don't think. So
right.
So it's kind of a cool stand, and sometimes you see issues like that, and they're like whatever, but like this one is cool. It's got a cool vibe, and it works quite a bit.
Terrence.
Overall, it's really good. It's kind of odd. It's one of the few issues in this Legacy story arc not written by Chuck Dixon. So I wonder, I'd love to have been a fly on the wall at the Writers' Summit and find out, like, how much input did Dixon have, or how much was Dixon, like, telling Munch, like, yeah, write a story in Calcutta and make sure Batman gets back to Gotham, or, or how much they worked on it would be an interesting behind-the-scenes kind of take. But, yeah, this, like you said, if you changed the narrative, made it a bomb, it would have been a really good issue. But it might have got kind of a little bit more lost and forgotten in the thousands and thousands and thousands of Batman stories out there. So being a part of Legacy, makes it, something I think a little more special.
Cool. All right, let's go on to Detective Comics 702 with a cover date of September 1996 with an on-sale date of July 17th, 1996. Cover price is $1.95 with the editor Scott Peterson. Writer is Chuck Dixon. The penciler is Graham Nolan. The inker is Scott Hanna. The letterist is John Costanza. The colorist is Gloria Vasquez. Cover credits go to Graham Nolan and Bill... insert word here. I can never say his last name. I'm right with Terrence. So Bill, with the guy that has too many consonants in his name. A Legacy Part 6. Gotham's Scourge. Batman and Nightwing and Huntress are watching over some specific altercations in the center of Gotham City to prevent the release of a new strain of the Ebola Gulf A virus.
So this is Bill Gates' computer. I mean, that is like using Wayne Gretzky's hockey stick,
Oddly enough, none of it seems to rub off.
Batman is watching a casino that will open the next day when he spots two men that are speaking to Ferris. He knows that Raz's plans to release the virus.
We might have to mount a legal challenge,
It's at the opening ceremony of the casino. Batman tells Nightwing and the others to start looking for Ra's al Ghul's ship while he finds a way to take the virus away.
Oh, and no messy DOS buildup.
Batman starts looking inside the casino for the most likely place to release the virus. When he evades shooting from the casino guards, he follows the clue that leads him to the casino's kitchen. He knocks out some thugs, opens a gas valve with the intentions of burning the entire place. By doing so, eliminating the virus.
I like it.
While he is at it, Bane arrives. Both engage in combat. Batman endures long enough to leave the gas, fill the kitchen. Batman locks himself in a storage cabin when the gas is about to erupt. Bane understands Batman's plan, time to find coverage, and manages to survive the blast. To survive the explosion that burns the casino entirely. Read, Rob. Learn to read. Once outside, Batman and Bane retake the fight to the shore. Bane has the upper hand and is about to drown Batman in the sea when Batman remembers the night that forged him. The strength comes back along with a renewed rage. With his renewed strength, Batman manages to subdue Bane, but when Batman plans to take him into police custody, dun dun dun, the tide rises and Bane is swept into deep waters. Batman is too exhausted from the confrontation and can't follow Bane. Nightwing and the others contact Oracle to find out where the ship of Ra's al Ghul was. They head towards Raz's without knowing Raz's plans to eliminate them all. So, now that I got my tongue wrapped out from around my teeth, I really dug this issue. Again, I think we say it a million times on this show, Dixon's storytelling, but Graham Nolan's art, I think this is at the pinnacle of his career, even with a different inker, just looking at, Nightwing, Robin, and Huntress and Batman in those two pages going back to back, the way Batman is perched on the gargoyle. You have Huntress crouched in the rain, Nightwing eating popcorn, and Tim down in the lower part of like the boat exhibit in Gotham City. I think these are all really good character little pieces that you can just kind of look at and see different things. I think it's funny that Nightwing has picked up some stale popcorn. Like, kind of thinking of the pandemic, the last time a baseball game was played at a stadium, and when things are slowly starting to reopen, if somebody says, "Hey, there's some stale popcorn on the ground," I think I'm going to eat it. I don't know. But
it's just see, it makes perfect sense because that's a dude that grew up in the circus and just kind of travels around and to different venues and just kind of goes about his day with like in arenas like that. That makes actually is like something Dick Grayson would totally do. Yeah,
definitely would. So the let's get the big elephant out of the room. I think this is a moment that a lot of fans had been waiting for, that we get the first real official major confrontation between Batman and Bane. There's some good character pieces with the other parts of the Bat family, but I think the big draw for this issue is Batman and Bane's confrontation. They are both at their peak. Batman's not been broken down, or he hasn't been back for about 30 seconds, and this isn't a weaker version of Bane. This is a fully formed Bane and Batman back. So what was it like for you guys reading this, either back then or even just now, seeing the rematch between these two titans? Let's start with Terrence on this one.
Kind of don't really remember reading this one back then. I kind of always thought it was kind of a weird thing that Bane was out there knowing that Bruce was Batman, like he had that information, but yet what is he going to do with it? So I do kind of like in this reading it this time where he calls him Bruce Wayne during the fight and stuff. As far as like the thing with Knightfall is that the big knock on Knightfall is that Bruce Wayne, Batman, never gets to confront Bane after Bane breaks his back, and it's actually Azrael Jean-Paul who defeats Bane, and so Bruce Wayne is just left broken, and people who are Bruce Wayne fans, that's their biggest knock and disappointment on that. I guess the issue 700 was more of it's Batman versus Bane round 2 for me, and this I can't say it's bad, but if my hopes was like, oh, it's Batman versus Bane, here we go, like the Clash of the Titans, this has got to be kind of disappointment. I mean, Batman basically like hides in a, like, what did you call it, a refrigeration unit or storage bin or something? Like, I mean, if I was like hanging out with my friends talking about like the battle of Batman and Bane and what would happen, like Batman hiding in a storage container is not like high up there on the list. And I actually got kind of confused. Like I had to go back because they start fighting and I'm like, they're in a kitchen and it's going to blow up and there's sprinklers, I think. And the next thing I know, they're like in the water. I'm like, how did this? And I had to like go back, and I didn't even realize Batman was in the storage bin. I had to look in the panel and see like his like calf and foot like jumping into it, and then it was just kind of a weird transition. I don't know, maybe I just am an idiot and couldn't follow it, but it was it wasn't the big huge like Clash of the Titans that I would have wanted.
Ryan,
earlier Terrence had a major disagreement with Rob, and I guess now I'm going to have a major disagreement with Terrence.
I mean,
yeah, what? Yeah, I love this issue. I agree with Rob. I think it is absolutely. I mean, it's my favorite issue of the second half of Legacy for sure. And I totally agree with Rob. The art in this Nolan art is like definitely like probably some of his best work. Everybody just looks pitch perfect. The coloring is so good. The form, like it's like peak like 90s Batman. It looks good, and all the characters are in it. And they're interacting. It's raining through the whole thing. It's got a good mood to it. And this rematch with Bane, this is the thing that I didn't really remember a lot about the last issue, thinking about Legacy before rereading it, but this rematch I did. I mean, it is kind of like it's of course, it's not the final word on Batman versus Bane, but it is like a good rematch. Like the fact that like, okay, there's Batman and Bane, and they're back fully formed again, and this is what happens. And the content of their discussion as they fight is maybe even more important than the fight about like, tell me what I am and scream my name, but then Batman screams his name for a different reason, and then you get follow up on that later. It just kind of sets the stage for future Batman versus Bane stories, and I don't really know if they ever really got a good finale for that in this era. I don't think
so.
I haven't read far enough to kind of know, but yeah, I don't think so. I know that there's some Bane versus Azrael rematch stuff in the Azrael book, and I don't know if that took place before or after Legacy. I really don't know. There is a discussion here that where Batman and Bane talk to each other, and Batman talks about the last time we met, you had turned your back on crime. You told me to renounce Venom. I don't know when that happened. Like, did they meet each other before this? Before revealing that he was Ubu? Because I don't know when that would have been. So, that's just...
Yeah, I gotta look it up. But there was, after Knightfall, there was a sort of an issue where... I'll look it up and try to find it. But where Bruce Wayne was back as Batman, I think, and then Bane was like, yeah, don't worry, your secret's safe. I'm retired. I'm done with all this.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I cannot...
I'll look for it. What did you guys think? Because if you guys disagree with me, you probably will disagree with this. I thought that one scene where like Bane has Batman's head underwater, and he says, it's page 19. If you got the floppies, he says that Batman's thinking so much pain so long ago, just like yesterday, and the bubbles of the water turn into his mom's pearls, and he's like, the night my parents died.
The last time I knew. I like that.
I thought that was lame.
Yeah.
I got a stack of Scarecrow issues with Batman all scared. I got him fearful that Jason Todd is dead running in. I don't know. I just thought that was like, what do you mean the last time you felt fear? I've got I don't know. Anyway, okay. I'm glad you guys liked it. I mean, I do agree. The art is amazing. The art is beautiful.
It ties into the whole Dark Knight Rises thing. Is like, I'm not afraid. I'm angry. Like, because I don't know fear. I know I have rage. You know what I mean? Like, that makes sense to me, and especially in the context of this story. I mean, you can take a lot of things that you can hear Batman say in any like single story and be like, well, it kind of contradicts. There's other stories that I mean, yeah, you can, but like, I think it's good.
I can and I will, sir.
I am a biased comic book nerd.
Yes. Yeah. Well, if Rob can point out the festivities in Calcutta being inaccurate, I can point out that I have a book that has Batman scared. Yeah. And Scooby-Doo Adventures number 32, Batman was frightened of the meddling teens.
Could be in the same continuity. You don't know.
That's right. Yeah. I'll split the difference on this one. I do really like the art. I think the bubbles are great turning into the pearls, but narratively I was like, okay, I'm on one side with Ryan, like I get it, that's cool, that's awesome. On the other side I'm like, well, but you probably could have thrown something else, like to directly tie his mind.
You could have tied it for the last time Bane had Batman, like instead of the pearls, I would have had like Bane holding Batman's body up about to break his back or something, like revisiting the last time that Bane almost had Batman, you know, instead of that would have made a little bit more sense to me as a rematch.
But as a whole, I did think I think this is the most satisfying Batman and Bane confrontation, but like you said, I don't think it ever really gets resolved. That at the end of the day, Bane is done. He's broken. He can never do this to Batman again. I think it ends. The thing that ends the fight is the high tide coming in, washing Bane out to sea, and Batman is just now too tired to go after him. So Batman's clearly won. Bane's knocked out on this raft, but Batman's in no condition to continue on. So I do like it. I think like you said, the form of all the figures look absolutely fantastic. Even Nolan's use of drawing fire and water look great. Sometimes, when artists have to do other like animals or fire, water, different aesthetics, they kind of look cheap and like, they're just kind of drawing little waves. Every little ripple that's used is just phenomenal in this issue. I really dig it.
The issue where Bane talks to Batman about kicking the venom habit and all that was in Batman, Vengeance of Bane 2, The Redemption, which came out in 1995. And it says here, this is in Wikipedia, Bane recovers from his venom addiction while serving time in Blackgate Prison, as seen in Batman, Vengeance of Bane 2, The Redemption. He rebuilt his body to its peak and eventually escapes from prison and returns to Gotham, where he fights alongside the original Batman, who has by now recovered and taken his mantle back from Azrael to take out a criminal ring that is distributing a venom derivative to street-level thugs, following a victory over the criminals and the revelation that behind it is the same doctor that performed the surgery on Bane years earlier in Penaduero. Bane proclaims that he is innocent of his past crimes and urges Batman to stop hunting him. He then leaves Gotham without fighting Batman to begin the search for his dead father. And then, and then Bane's search brings him back to Santa Prisca, where he meets Talia al Ghul, and then the rest is legacy.
Or Bane of the Demon, right?
Yeah. So where the Vengeance of Bane is if you have the very nice and well put together Knightfall omnibus trilogy. The very first book in Knightfall is Vengeance of Bane, and the very last book is Vengeance of Bane 2. So that's where that is. I mean, you can find out single issues, but
it does not say if Vengeance of Bane 2 came polybagged with some lame-ass skateboard magazine from the 90s, but my guess is it did. Yeah.
It probably did. If there was $1 to be made somewhere. Yeah. So this issue ends with Robin, Nightwing, and Huntress on a boat headed towards Ra's al Ghul's boat, and we see Ra's and, about said Lady Shiva, Talia on the boat. I like the little banter that the two of them have, basically like, well, your beloved has failed, and should we reconsider the detective father? It's to be like, well, the one guy didn't do it. Is Batman going to do it? So I thought we're kind of realigned with Talia still loving her beloved. So we'll continue on. You guys have any final thoughts before we hit to Robin 33? Ryan?
No, this is just absolutely the climax of the story for me. Like the Batman Bane rematch with this kind of art and writing and commentary on the characters stands out even more than the overall story of Legacy itself. Legacy for me is more like Batman versus Bane, like, round 2, with all the other stuff being a nice bonus instead of the other way around. So for me, like, especially like, and I kind of agree with Terrence. I'm back to agreeing with Terrence about the back half of Legacy does kind of, not that it's a whimper, but it definitely feels like this is the climax, and everything else just kind of resolves a little bit strangely. Like, it doesn't feel. It feels like a couple issues tacked together, and some things happen and get resolved, but not exactly in as smooth of a manner as I would have hoped. For a 8-part story like this. But
right, Terrence.
Yeah, I'm guessing maybe Chuck Dixon might have been slave to the publishing schedule, because I feel like it would have worked better if Robin 33 was part 6 and then this was part 7. This was like the final confrontation if they wrapped up the Ra's al Ghul stuff. I do love in this issue page 10, which shows Batman, but it's just the white outline of his eyes and teeth. That's like right out of the Norm Brayfogle page book, and I love it.
I was going to mention that. That's an excellent callback. I was like, ooh, it's like Dixon riffing off of a Brayfogle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to see what Dixon wrote in like the notes for that page.
I know, make it like Brayfogle. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and then there's a scene where it's like you've got Batman and like a couple of the thugs are going behind Bane to like get at Batman, and he's like, "No, I'll take this." And all the thugs are running, and Bane's just standing, and like the one guy's tie is like in the breeze with the other guy's ponytail, and the look on their faces as they're like running from this like Batman Bane fight is pretty cool. Yeah, Ryan and I disagreed, and Rob, instead of taking an opinion, you were Switzerland and tried to just be right down the middle and right be narrow. And for not having a backbone and not taking a stance, you're officially kicked off the podcast, Rob. I got to do it. I got to kick you off. So there you go.
Well, pandemic's over. I've been kicked off.
That's Rob's legacy. Yep.
That's my legacy. Well, this is where we'll have to end the episode since Terrence kicked me off of it. But, of course, he will reinstate me in a couple weeks, and we will continue our legacy conversation. So, like I said, this is where we're going to end the show. Thanks for tuning in and listening to us tell you why we love the Drake. Thanks for listening to the Batman universe. And, more importantly, thanks for listening to Robin. Everyone loves the Drake. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Take care. Bye.